Hey there, friend. Imagine this, you're at the top of the world. Power suits, corner offices, billions in deals. But one wrong step sends you tumbling straight into the lap of a man who barely has time to breathe, let alone fall in love. A single dad with calloused hands, a sleeping little girl on his chest, and eyes that carry the weight of the world. In that split second, everything shifts, and then, one quiet whisper changes two broken hearts forever. If stories like this make your chest tighten and your eyes sting, in the best way, then buckle up. This one's going to wreck you and then put you back together. If you're new here, or just love these kinds of raw, real tales of love that sneaks up when you least expect it, do me a solid right now. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters, and it helps more people find it. And if you want more stories that feel like a warm hug after a long day, smash subscribe and ring that bell. Trust me, the next one might just be your new favorite. Alright, let's dive in. To Elena Voss had always been the woman who fixed things, not the leaky faucet kind, though she could probably engineer a better one, but the billion-dollar kind. At 34, she was the CEO of Voss Dynamics, the AI company that whispered solutions into the ears of Fortune 500 execs, apps that predicted burnout before it hit, algorithms that mapped emotional fractures in teams like they were cracked glass. She had the penthouse in Chicago with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city look like a circuit board at night. She had the private jet on standby. She had the respect, the fear, the headlines. What she didn't have was peace. It had been 6 months since the collapse. Not the dramatic kind. No fainting in a boardroom, no ambulance lights. Just her alone in her office at 2 a.m., staring at a spreadsheet until the numbers blurred into her mother's handwriting on an old birthday card. "You're enough, Ellie." Always. Her mother had died 2 years ago, quietly in a hospital room Alana had paid for but never sat in long enough. Work had been her armor. Now it was suffocating her. The board had given her an ultimatum: 4 weeks off, or they'd vote her out. Recharge, they called it. She called it exile. So here she was on a puddle jumper flight to Evergreen Valley, population 48072, a speck of a town in northern Wisconsin where wellness retreats meant chopping wood and staring at lakes. No Wi-Fi in the cabins, no excuses. She was in 12A, aisle seat, laptop open even though the flight attendant had glared twice. Across the row in well 20C, sat a man who looked like he'd been carved from the very pines they were flying over. Mid-30s maybe. Flannel shirt rolled to his elbows, dark hair a little too long, like he hadn't had time for a barber in months. On his lap was a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, curled up asleep with her thumb half in her mouth and a stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. The man, Marcus, she'd overheard the flight attendant call him, was reading to her from a worn paperback, his voice low and steady even though the girl was out cold. Elena envied that voice. It sounded like safety. The plane hit the first pocket of turbulence like a fist to the gut. The seatbelt light dinged. Elena gripped the armrest, but her mind was already spinning. If this thing goes down, who even knows I'm on it? My assistant. The board. Another jolt. She unbuckled, stupid, she knew, and stood to use the tiny lavatory at the back, needing to splash water on her face to breathe. The plane dropped. Not a little dip, a full stomach, lurching plunged like God had yanked the cord on an elevator. Elena's heels skidded on the thin carpet. Her arms windmilled, and then she was falling backward, straight into the lap of the man in 12C. Time slowed. She landed hard, her back against his chest, her legs sprawled across the aisle like a broken doll. His arms came around her instinctively, one across her ribs, the other steadying her hip. Warm and solid and smelling faintly of pine soap and something sweeter, like the little girl's strawberry shampoo. For one impossible second, they were tangled together, her head against his shoulder, his breath hot on her neck. The plane leveled out. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, apologizing for the brief, rough patch. Elena scrambled up, mortified, her face burning hotter than the engines. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." The man was laughing, not mocking, a low, rumbling chuckle that vibrated through her even as she stood. His eyes, hazel flecked with gold, crinkled at the corners. "Hey, no apologies needed. You okay?" That was some landing. The little girl stirred, blinking up at Elena with wide brown eyes. "You fell like a bird, Daddy, did you see? She flew." Elena laughed despite herself, a shaky, surprised sound. "Yeah, well, this bird's got terrible aim." She smoothed her blazer, suddenly aware of how ridiculous she must look. Designer suit, perfect hair, now rumpled like she'd been in a bar fight. Sit, the man said, gesturing to the empty seat beside him. Turbulence isn't done with us yet. She hesitated, then sank into 12B. Up close he was even more disarming. Strong jaw shadowed with stubble, a faint scar through one eyebrow. Hands that looked like they built things, not just signed for them. I'm Alina, she said, offering her hand. Marcus Hale. His grip was firm, Calusa's rough against her palm. And this is Sophie. Sophie waved the rabbit. Hi, Elena. Do you like bunnies? I love them, Elena said, and meant it for the first time in years. The rest of the flight passed in a blur of easy conversation. Marcus was heading home to Evergreen Valley after a specialist appointment in Chicago for Sophie's asthma. She's been having a rough go, he said quietly, when Sophie dozed off again. Lost her mom 4 years ago. Hiking accident. I was supposed to be there. His voice cracked just a little, but he covered it with a cough. Alina didn't push. Instead, she told him about the retreat. They say I need to unplug. As if unplugging doesn't mean my company falls apart. You ever think maybe it needs to? He asked, not unkindly. Sometimes the wires get crossed when you're the only one holding them. By the time they landed, the rain was sheeting down. They said their goodbyes at baggage claim. Awkward hugs, Sophie insisting on a high five, and went their separate ways. Alina watched Marcus carry Sophie on his shoulders through the terminal, the little girl's laughter echoing like wind chimes. She told herself that was the end of it. She was wrong. The wellness retreat was a joke. A cluster of cedar cabins on the edge of Blackthorn Lake, run by a woman named Ruth who looked like she'd baked every pie in the county. No phones after 8 p.m., Ruth said cheerfully as she handed Alina a key. At breakfast is at dawn. Real dawn, not your city kind. Elena lasted 3 days. On the 4th, she drove into town for essentials, which meant decent coffee and a signal strong enough to check her email. Her rental SUV hit a pothole the size of a crater on the gravel road out of the retreat. The tire blew with a bang that made her swear in 3 languages. She was soaked to the bone by the time she popped the hood, rain plastering her hair to her face. No spare. No bars on her phone. Perfect. Headlights cut through the downpour. A battered blue pickup pulled up, wipers slapping. The driver killed the engine and stepped out, hood up against the rain. Marcus. Of course. He took one look at her, ruined suit and all, and grinned. You again. You got a habit of falling into trouble, Voss. Or into laps. She shot back, and they both laughed. He fixed the tire in 20 minutes flat, hands moving with the quiet competence of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Sophie was in the truck cab, drawing on the foggy window. Daddy says you're a wizard with computers. She called out, can you make my drawings move? Alina crouched beside the truck door, rain dripping from her lashes. I can try. What's it a picture of? Family, Sophie said simply. Me, Daddy, and Mommy in heaven. But she needs wings. Alina's throat tightened. Wings it is. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag. Come on, inn's full because of the Maple Festival. My mom's place has a guest room. Dry clothes, hot soup, no arguments. She should have said no. She had a cabin, a plan walls, but the rain was cold and his eyes were warm, and Sophie was already scooting over to make room. Ruth turned out to be Marcus's mother. The guest room was actually the attic above his workshop, a cozy space with slanted ceilings, a quilt that smelled like lavender, and a window overlooking the lake. Marcus's house was next door, a rambling 2-story with toys scattered on the porch and a tire swing creaking in the wind. That night, over chicken soup and cornbread, they talked like old friends. He told her about quitting his marketing job in Milwaukee the day after the funeral. Couldn't stand the suits anymore. Sophie needed trees, not traffic. She told him about her mother, the way the grief had lodged in her chest like a splinter she couldn't pull out. Sophie fell asleep on the couch between them, head on Elena's lap this time. When Marcus carried her to bed, Alina stood in the doorway watching. The tenderness in his hands as he tucked the blanket around his daughter cracked something open in her. The days blurred after that. She helped Sophie with a school project on inventions that help people. Together they coded a simple app that reminded kids to take their inhalers. Sophie called it Bunny Breath. Marcus taught Alina to split firewood, his hands guiding hers on the axe handle, his body warm behind her in the chill morning air. Feel the weight, he murmured. Don't fight it. She felt the weight of him too. The way his laugh filled the kitchen when Sophie told a knock joke. The way he looked at Alina across the dinner table, like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve slowly, but the cracks were there. One night, after Sophie had a bad asthma attack, wheezing in the dark until the nebulizer kicked in, Alina sat with Marcus on the porch steps. He was shaking, just a little. "I keep thinking if I'd been faster that day on the trail," he whispered. "You can't carry that forever," Alina said. Her voice was hoarse. "She'd want you to live, Marcus, not just survive." He looked at her then, really looked. "And what about you? When are you gonna stop surviving?" She didn't answer. The call came 2 weeks in, her VP frantic. "The merger's tanking, investors are pulling out. They want you back yesterday." Alina packed in silence. Sophie cried when she told her. Marcus just not uptight. Figured this was temporary. At the airport, Sophie hugged her so hard Alina's ribs ached. "Come back, okay, for the festival." Marcus walked her to security. The line stretched forever, but they stood there anyway. "I fell into your lap once," Alina said, trying for lightness. "Turns out I fell a lot harder than I thought." He cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. "Alina." She kissed him then, quick, desperate, tasting rain and goodbye. The flight home was hell. She stared out the window, replaying every moment. The whisper she'd almost said on the porch that night, "I think I love you both," stuck in her throat like a stone. Back in Chicago, the office swallowed her. Emails until dawn. But the numbers didn't sing anymore. They just screamed. 3 days later, her phone buzzed. A video from Sophie, the little girl in a maple leaf crown, waving at the camera. "Alina, the festival started. Daddy made a chair for you. It has stars on it. Come home." She was on the next flight. She didn't tell them she was coming. Rented a car in the rain again. Full circle. And drove straight to the festival grounds. The town square was alive with lights and laughter, fiddles wailing, the smell of fried dough and bonfire smoke. She found them by the stage. Marcus in a dark green sweater, Sophie spinning in a red dress. He was watching the dancers, but his shoulders were slumped, like something was missing. Alina stepped out of the shadows. Sophie saw her first. "Alina!" The little girl ran, crashing into her legs. Marcus turned, and the look on his face, shock, then something raw and shining, nearly undid her. She walked to him through the crowd. The music swelled. He met her halfway. "You came back," he said, voice rough. "I never really left." Sophie tugged them both toward the dance floor. "Dance!" Like in the movies. They did. Awkward at first, her heels sinking into the grass, his hands tentative on her waist, then easier, closer, until her head rested on his chest, and she could hear his heart. Steady, strong hers. Later, when Sophie was tucked in at Ruth's for a sleepover, they sat by the lake. The water lapped gently. Fireflies winked like tiny stars. Marcus pulled her close, his arms the safest place she'd ever known. "That day on the plane," he said quietly, "when you fell. I thought there she is. The one who was always supposed to land here, X." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was so scared. Of wanting this, of losing it." He tilted her chin up. His whisper was so soft she felt it more than heard it, brushing her lips like a promise. "You don't have to be the strong one anymore. Let me hold the world for a while. Let me hold you." She kissed him then, slow and deep, the kind of kiss that mends fractures. And in that moment, the splinter in her chest finally worked its way free. They built a life after that. Not perfect. Sophie still had bad nights. Alina still took red-eye flights sometimes, but real. She opened a small Voss Dynamics outpost in Evergreen, hiring locals, teaching kids to code. Marcus's furniture started showing up in design magazines. Sophie grew taller, her laugh louder, her drawings full of all three of them now. Years later, on their wedding day under the same maple trees, Alina stood at the altar with Sophie as her flower girl. Marcus took her hands, eyes shining. "Remember when you fell," he whispered, just for her. She smiled, pressing her forehead to his. "Best mistake I ever made." And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, two broken people had found their way home. Not in spite of the fall, but because of it. Two, if that story hit you in the feels, if it reminded you that healing often comes from the most unexpected places, then you know what to do. Like this video, subscribe for more. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that love doesn't always knock. It sometimes just falls right into your lap. You're not alone out there, none of us are. Until next time, keep your heart open. The end.